Did you know that the US national anthem was originally a high society British drinking song? Or how about the fact that our national anthem is the only national anthem where the whole thing is one giant question? Now, if you're anything like me, you've grown up your entire life looking at the lyrics to the national anthem and wondering why Brave has a question mark at the end when it's sung so much like a resolution. Well, the story behind the US national anthem is way more interesting than you probably thought. Let's check it out. The year is 1807, and tensions are rising once again between the newly independent United States and Great Britain. And this is all because the US is wanting to grow and expand as a new country does, and Britain's just like, yo, don't. And also, the British and the French have been fighting this whole time, and the British want to stop the Americans from trading with the French. It's a whole thing. Basically, Britain's pretty pissed. So the Royal Navy has been making things really difficult for the Americans and the French, basically blockading the French from the rest of the world. And the crazy thing is that this whole time, the British are using this thing called impressment, where they would basically go up to any British merchant or commoner in the colonies at the time, and they'd be like, hey, you know how you have this job? Yeah, well, you work for us now. Hop in, loser, we're going to war. In fact, they even did this to thousands of American citizens who the British were still just saying, oh, no, you're still British. As you can imagine, tensions eventually boiled over, and in June of 1812, the United States declared war on Britain for the second time in less than 50 years, which began a 2-year span of chaotic incidents and bloody battles.
By the way, I don't know if you know this, but all the while this is going on, there is a debate happening in the US government over annexing Canada. See, at the time, the British were stationing themselves throughout Canada and causing quite a big headache for the Americans. And so Secretary of State James Monroe goes, it might be necessary to invade Canada not as an object of the war, but as a means to bring it to a satisfactory end. Sounds innocent enough, right? Well, of course, while President Madison claimed that permanent annexation was not an objective, he recognized that once acquired, it would be, quote, difficult to relinquish. I mean, we're already here. We just got the Wi-Fi set up. We might as well stay for a little while, right? Guys, basically the Americans' goal was to rid the entire continent of the British. And they assumed that just by walking into the country, they would be greeted as liberators. This will be easy, right? Thomas Jefferson even said that taking Canada this year as far as Quebec will be a mere matter of marching. Well, conveniently enough, this was not the case, and in 10 attempts to take over Canada between 1812 and 1814, the vast majority of them ended in bloody failure.
Anyway, it's 1814, and the war is still raging on, but both countries are yearning for peace, and formal peace talks begin on August 8th. But then 2 weeks later, on August 24th, the British just set fire to Washington, D.C., prompting literally everyone to be like, what the f***, guys? Several battles ensue, including the bombardment of Fort McHenry. Guarding the city of Baltimore, including the absolutely essential port of Baltimore, Fort McHenry was the only thing standing in Britain's way from taking the city, which would have been a massive strategic asset. And beginning on September 13th of 1814, the British bombard Fort McHenry for 25 hours straight. But to no avail, Fort McHenry survives the conflict with its strong fortifications and maybe a little accuracy problem by the British. Enter Francis Scott Key,
a notable Washington lawyer and an amateur poet. I feel like we talk a little bit about this guy in social studies class, but his story is way more interesting than you may have thought. Did you know he worked on a little court case called the Burr Conspiracy Trial? We're talking about Vice President under Thomas Jefferson, Aaron Burr. And according to the accusations against him, Burr attempted to rally support amongst a group of US farmers, politicians, and army officers to establish an independent country in the southwestern United States and parts of Mexico. The vice president was trying to start his own country, allegedly, and he was arrested for treason under Jefferson's own orders. Burr's version of it was that he intended to farm about 40,000 acres in the Texas territory at the time that was leased to him by the Spanish crown. And as politicians go, he was ultimately acquitted. And to this day, we will never know what his real intentions were or how much support he had rallied around him. Also, fun fact, did you know that Francis Scott Key was a distant cousin and namesake of F. Scott Fitzgerald, the guy who wrote The Great Gatsby, and whose full name was Francis Scott Key Fitzgerald? This is where the story of our national anthem begins. Fort McHenry is about to be attacked, and Francis is sailing from Baltimore towards the Chesapeake Bay, hoping to find the British fleet somewhere out there. You see, he's on a mission to negotiate the release
release of this guy, William Beans. He's some old guy who lived in Maryland who got arrested after arguing with British troops when they tried to plunder his estate. He's a real, get off my lawn kind of guy. And so Francis is telling the British commanders, look, he's old, he's crotchety, he doesn't know any better. Just do us a solid, don't kill him. And they're like, okay, but here's the thing. We're not gonna let you leave because we're worried that you may have overheard our master plans to take over the city of Baltimore, and we don't want you going and doing any Paul Revere type of shit, because we've been down that road before. And so with his ship tethered to the Royal Navy ships, the bombardment of Fort McHenry begins. And Francis Scott Key is left with nothing to do but watch through the night as the British attempt to wipe Fort McHenry off the face of the map. However, the morning afterwards, he looks through his spyglass and sees the 15-star, 15-stripe, 30 by 42-foot flag waving defiantly over the fort, signaling that the fort had not fallen during the night and that the Americans had been victorious. He was so moved by what he saw that he began writing what we now know as the Star-Spangled Banner. The poem was originally called A Defense of Fort McHenry, and as you can see by the words, it was literally him asking the question if America had survived the night. And as we take these lines and we translate them into a little bit more of a modern vernacular that's just easier for us to kind of understand, it becomes perfectly clear exactly what our national anthem is all about. Oh say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? This phrase is literally just saying, hey, it's getting light outside. Is the flag still there? It was there when it got dark. Is it still there now? And if it was, that would be the signal that the fort had not fallen during the night. So Francis, who had been stuck watching from the water this whole time, in many ways his fate could be decided by the answer to that question. Whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, or the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming. This one kind of sounds a little bit more convoluted to us now, but basically what it's saying was the flag was there, we watched it through the fight, or the ramparts, over the defensive walls of the fort, flying defiantly as a symbol of American resolve against British attacks. Did you know that the Star-Spangled Banner was written to the melody of what you could call an old high society British drinking song? Yeah, the Anacreontic song was the anthem of the Anacreontic Society, an elite British gentlemen's club whose members, consisting mostly of wealthy men of high social rank, would meet throughout the year on Wednesdays to combine musical appreciation with eating and drinking. But the society would come to an end after the Duchess of Devonshire attended one of the meetings. And because some of the comic songs were not exactly calculated for the entertainment of ladies, and the singers were told to chill out on the raunchiness a little bit, displeasing many of the members who resigned one by one, and then after a general meeting was called about the matter, the society was dissolved. Hey everybody, listen, look, the funny songs, they're funny, but they're not exactly appropriate for the ladies, and we just gotta dial it back a little bit. Is that cool? Just dial back the raunchiness, maybe just a bit.
You want what?
Okay. Yeah.
Stop singing our songs! How dare you demand that of us?
Okay, but like, here's the thing. Look,
You
you just
can't.
can't. Okay, the Duchess, she's pretty pissed, and like, it's just listen, it's just not gonna work.
It is a travesty!
Okay.
I
Yeah.
shan't be subjected to such animosities! We will continue to sing, good sir!
Yep, okay.
Sing about drinking and joking and booze!
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. Look, it's the way it's gotta be. So sorry.
Well, then I quit!
Yeah.
Yep, right. The society is hereby dissolved. This.
And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Amidst the heavy bombardment and the darkness of that September night, literally the only thing that would have lit up anything during the night would have been the explosions and from the rockets and the bombs and the cannons being sent from the British from the water to the fort. And it would have been these brief periods of illumination that would have been the only way that you could have seen if that flag was still up. Oh say, does that Star-Spangled Banner yet wave, or the land of the free and the home of the brave? And here is the crucial question that Francis Scott Key is asking, and the one that encapsulates the national anthem and the Battle of Fort McHenry. Is the flag still flying? Have we held out against the British bombardment? Has America survived the night? In February of 1815, the Treaty of Ghent was ratified and the war was officially over. And it would be the last time that the Americans and the British would go to war with one another. In the weeks following the Battle of Fort McHenry, Key's poem, A Defense of Fort McHenry, was published in newspapers and taken to music publisher Thomas Carr, who was actually the guy who set the poem to the melody of the Anacreontic song. Over the next several years, the song would become increasingly popular, eventually competing with Hail Columbia as the de facto national anthem by the time of the Mexican-American War and the American Civil War. But it wasn't until the World Series of 1918 between the Boston Red Sox and the Chicago Cubs that the song would make its sporting event debut, beginning the now more than century-long tradition. And it was finally adopted as the official national anthem by an act of Congress in 1931, more than 100 years after the poem's first publication. And since then, hundreds, if not thousands, of renditions of the Star-Spangled Banner have been recorded, including Stravinsky's controversial 1944 version, which maybe we'll have to cover in another video, as well as John Clayton's arrangement performed by Whitney Houston at the 1991 Super Bowl, which is my personal favorite version of the national anthem, and one that we've covered in a video on this channel quite a long time ago now. The Star-Spangled Banner is the only national anthem that I know of that contains zero proclamation of power and devotion, as is customary with most national anthems throughout the world. A typical anthem is a statement of love for one's country, pointing out many of the things that make it great. And here we can see a couple examples of this. "O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, with glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee." Very much a proclamation of we love our country, it's amazing, and we are going to protect it. "O Canada" is a great anthem, by the way. Or how about Portugal, for example? "Heroes of the sea, noble race, valiant and immortal nation, now is the hour to raise up on high once more Portugal's splendor. From out of the mists of memory, O homeland, we hear the voices of your great forefathers that shall lead you on to victory. To arms, our land and sea, to fight for our homeland, to march against the enemy guns." This is a proclamation of we are going to defend our country. It's very strong words of power. Then one of my particular favorites, the the German national anthem. "Unity and justice and freedom for the German fatherland. Towards these let us all strive, brotherly with heart and hand. Unity and justice and freedom are the foundation of happiness." It's actually quite a bit more pontificating than some of the other ones, but it's a great one nonetheless, and the melody of that one is phenomenal. But you see, compared to all of these other anthems, the US national anthem is really unique in the sense that it's simply asking the question if the country still exists. It basically tells the story of how America came to be. It asks the question that the first independent Americans were faced with time and time again as the newly formed country fought for its independence. Will we make it through the night? Is our flag still there? This was absolutely fascinating to me when I learned about this, and also the fact that the melody was based on an old British drinking song, basically. Did you guys know this? We grew up knowing the national anthem and singing it and doing all this kind of stuff, but I don't think anybody ever really fully explained. We know the story roughly of Francis Scott Key and the fact that he wrote it, but all of these intricate details about that night and about what actually happened in the bombardment of Fort McHenry, I didn't know about a lot of this stuff. So I don't know, let me know in the comments below if this is something that you had learned about in school or something that they left out of social studies class. And hey, don't forget, if you want to support the channel and you want to learn piano, the best way to do that is by going and getting 30% off the Intro to Piano course using code MUSICTHEORY30. There's a link down in the description below. It's my course of over 170 videos of instruction and exercises that will take you from maybe even not having played this instrument at all before to having a basic toolkit that you can use to start playing anything you want. It's available now at the link in the description below, and that is the best way that you can support what we do here on this channel, and I'm so appreciative of you for doing that. So be sure to check that out, get 30% off, use code MUSICTHEORY30, and that's gonna be all for this video. I wanna thank you guys so much for taking the time to check it out, and we will see you in the next one.